Hello everybody and welcome to my garden. Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you've watched my videos before, you'd know that I recently, over the last 2 months, moved, and for the first time I'm having an outdoor space to play with. Now, when I moved, I made the outdoors an immediate priority. Of course, I had the indoors sorted first, but I really wanted to get my hands dirty and start gardening. And it's almost been 2 months, and I'm fairly happy with the progress my garden has made so far. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to show you what I've done so far, what's growing, what's not growing, and so on. Quick disclaimer straight away, I'm still making a lot of experiences with growing outdoors. This is the first time I'm really done that, so I can't speak too much from experience. So you guys know, proof is in the pudding. When it comes to my indoor plants, I've been growing them on moss poles for over 3 years, so I feel really comfortable passing on any information to you. Everything you hear and see today, just take it with a grain of salt. I don't want to give you advice on how to grow plants outdoors because I don't have enough experience. I don't have the receipts to prove that whatever I'm doing is right. It's really just showing you what I've done and kind of like learning together almost, assessing what's working, what's not working, and so on. But it's more of a show and tell. I just want to show you the space I have created because I love spending time out here. Now, the other thing that I wanted to just get out of the way straight away, because I've been getting a lot of questions about it, is obviously what my game plan is for these plants out here. And I hope the background noise isn't too crazy, but we're outside, I can't control the background, right? Now, what are my intentions behind the outdoor space? I almost want to create like a third bedroom out here without the bed. But I have less space indoors available in this new place compared to the old place, which means that some of the plants that used to live inside just don't fit anymore. Plus I have less light available indoors, which means that some plants are not going to have a good time growing indoors because there's just not enough light and not enough room. So some of these plants just had to move outside now, and it doesn't matter what season of the year is, I don't have space for them indoors. So the plants that are here, they will stay here throughout all 4 seasons. When I first moved in, it was really just towards the end of summer, still really hot, nice days. So I started putting plants outdoors and they had time to get used to the new conditions before it started getting a bit colder. Now we're in autumn heading into winter, so during night it can drop down to like 12, 13, 14 degrees sometimes. In winter it can go down to, I think the lowest I've ever seen on my phone was actually 6 degrees. So it's not freezing cold. So none of these plants should experience frost. But of course these are more tropical plants. They would prefer warmer temperatures. So I don't know how they'll go, right? It is definitely survival of the fittest. Now I'm taking inspiration of what I'm seeing on the streets, right? I see a lot of alocasias being growing outdoors, just in people's front yards, backyards, like outside office buildings. The botanic gardens actually aren't that far away from me. We should have very similar environmental conditions. So whatever the botanic gardens is growing outdoors, I should be able to grow outdoors as well. So I've taken inspiration from them, and based on that, I'm thinking that most of my plants are gonna have an okay time. They might not be thriving over the next few months, given that we're going into winter, but I hope they will come back with a vengeance in spring. And if not, then, well, at least I learned something, and then in spring I can properly set up the garden with plants that I know will be suited for this space. And that's where I also want to get into natives a little more. All of the plants that I've planted in the garden, I didn't purchase these plants, I already had them. If I wouldn't have any plants and an empty garden, those would not be the plants that I would be getting for this garden, because I know it's not the perfect conditions for them. But I already had them, so I might as well just give it a shot. Alrighty, I reckon that's enough disclaimer. What I've done actually, I filmed the garden when I first moved in, and then I filmed the garden after I'd done my initial planting. So let's throw it back to Jan from a few months ago. Hey everybody, today I ventured into uncharted territory. planting outside. I didn't film my efforts this morning, to be honest, just because I wanted to enjoy the process and not necessarily constantly worry about the camera and the camera angle and the sound and all of that. So I actually had a really good time. It was great for my mental health after a very stressful move. But I want to show you the result. And well, before I show you the result, I'm just going to put a quick clip up here so you can see what it looked like before I started gardening. Well, and this is the end result. So let's have a quick look at everything. So as you can see, I put down some nice black mulch. I think the black just gives me a really nice contrast with the leaves. Well, over here we've got a Dean McDowell. The Dean got really burned in the other courtyard before. So I figured I'm going to give it a more of a shady spot. And in front of it I've got some Gloriosum. Don't ask why they're facing the back way. I planted them so they're going to crawl forwards, but the leaves are pointing the other way at the moment. Some more crawlers. I've got a Silver Cloud over here and I've got a Mame over here. So let's see how they're going with the transition to the outside. This is a big bird of paradise. And I obviously didn't plant this. This was already here, otherwise it wouldn't be so nice and large. But the bird of paradise is great because it shades all of the plants underneath a little bit. So over here I put my Maranta. Let's see if the Maranta appreciates it out here, but she had no issues growing on my previous balcony that would have had much harsher conditions. So I reckon now that it's actually in the ground and it can spread, it's really just going to spread and kind of take over, hopefully. Got a little island of still potted up plants. It looks a little bit odd for now, but when I start adding furniture over here, then these little islands of pots I think will make more sense. So I didn't want to put everything in the ground. Behind it, we've got it used to be Caladium, then it was Geopercha. Now I think it's I'll put the name on screen. It keeps changing the name. And right next to it, I've got the Cerebilis, blah, 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 blah. It looks a little bit sad right now. Actually, I bought this one new from Bunnings. That was my housewarming gift for myself. Next to it, we've got a Triostar Caletheia. It's seen better days, but that's really because it was on my balcony before and it was getting a lot of harsh sun. Over here it's under a big tree, so it should get a little bit of shaded or better shaded light. Some smaller Marantas over here as well. Let's see if they're gonna cope. I hope so, but time will tell. Over here I've got a little pole hanging. It's an experiment. I'm trying to see if this Monstera can grow without a pot at all, so really just grow based on the moss pole, and it has actually given me its first fenestration without the need for a large root system. So anyway, I will film a separate video on this one, but I love doing small little experiments. Alrighty, and then on the other side of the tree, I've just got some Micans cuttings, some Siltepecana cuttings, some Syngonium cuttings. Those were all just kind of spare propagations I've had, and I figured why not put them here. Over here is a little Billy. Let's see if that's gonna grow. And then all these kind of succulent plants, they were actually already here, so I didn't plant them, but I wanted to honor the existing work that was done here. But let's talk about the obvious aspect. Yes, I have way too many moss poles and they don't all fit inside, or well, they would fit inside, but they wouldn't get enough light inside. I have very limited space for large plants indoors at the moment, so I'm trying to grow some of these out here now, and we'll see how we go. So we've got the, look, I put little pavers down. We've got the El Salvador over here. Next to it we've got, this is my Cebu Blue. This is the bottom half of the Cebu Blue. So you'd probably know the big Cebu Blue that I've got inside. This is actually the bottom part of the pole. I gave it to a friend, and now that I have so much more space, he actually gave it back. Then this is my regular Siltepecana, my Pinatipatita, and it's actually mature. I mean, this leaf grew in the old place already, so that's not a result of it being outside, but I'm hoping that it being outside, getting some nice light, that it's actually going to mature quite nicely. I've got a Mycons. This is the bottom part of my Adansonii pole, so I hope this will also, it's kind of, it's getting a bit crowded in here already, but I hope this is going to do well. So you can see this was the bottom part, I then chopped it, and these three are the new shoots from the bottom part. And then we've got probably one of my favorites over here at the moment. This is my Ernestii, and it just unfurled this leaf outside, and I was 100% sure that it's just going to burn because it grew in quite a dark spot indoors, and I was like, oh my god, as soon as the full sun hits it, it's just going to burn. But it's actually just, I don't know, I think this is the nicest looking leaf it had so far. So, I mean, proof is in the pudding. It needs to definitely grow 2 or 3 leaves outside for me to be confident that it likes its spot, but it's a good sign for now. And then just a little Adansonii trailing over here to kind of hide the letter boxes, and another crawler. This is Plaumannii. Is it? I think so, yes. Yeah, which still leaves me with room for more, so you might see there's still a lot of space over here that I can fill with some smaller plants, but I'm probably only going to do that in spring. So I didn't, apart from that first plant, my own housewarming gift that I bought, I didn't really buy any plants for the garden. This is really just all the leftover plants that used to live indoors or on my balcony that now don't have a home anymore. So they now live here. Okay, and then we've got a few more potted plants over here. So against that wall, it is the sunniest spot because the sun sets over here. So it really shines quite a lot of light onto these plants over here. So my Canna Stuttgart, my Canna Cleopatra, they should be okay with a lot of light because, well, that's what they're used to from their days on my balcony. And then we've got a Rhaphidophora, the Cursiva over here as well. Yeah. You know, when I was moving, I kind of dehydrated all of my plants so they're a little bit lighter and easier to carry. I think I got a little carried away with dehydrating this plant. Yeah, I don't think it's, I mean, I think it can recover, but it's definitely suffered a little bit, which is 100% my fault. It has nothing to do with the actual move. It was that I over-prepared, let's say. And then what else do I have? So I've got 2 cacti over here that also came from my previous balcony, and I mean, we know cacti, they can definitely handle a lot of sun. And then behind me is my Dioscorea discala. Now it has definitely suffered a little bit from being put out here. And you can see that it's probably going to grow more like light green leaves rather than these really nice dark leaves. These darker leaves is probably a result of me giving it less light in an indoor setting. And you can see that at the top where it gets the most light, they definitely have suffered from the transition, but I would assume it's only because they're not used to it, right? So you can see some of the vines just died. It's just because they weren't used to all of that sun. But you can also see that since I put it on this poorly installed wire, it is holding on to it and it is trying to attach to it, right? So, let me put this one here. So it is growing, it is alive. And it is, no, look over here as well. Like, it's definitely doing its thing. I suppose I just need to stay patient and see if it likes this spot. But I could also go dormant any time now. So I might then have a different purpose for that wall. All right, and then you've got, obviously I've got this big empty space over here still. I want to put some plants out here that I know can handle quite a lot of sun, so maybe some big alocasias, some heliconias, maybe even a banana or something like that. I haven't 100% decided, maybe some cannas over here as well. Well, I haven't decided yet, but I reckon I might do it in spring. So, well, it's actually still 6 months away. Maybe I want to do it earlier. knowing me, I'll probably do it next weekend. But I haven't really made decisions yet. But this is where I'm actually gonna buy things specifically for this spot, whereas everything else was just like I already had these plants and I'm just hoping that they're gonna do well in the spots that I have assigned to them. And then the last thing I want to show you is I have 2 of these big gum trees in my garden and I absolutely love them. I mean, if you look up, how beautiful is this tree? It's giving me major Australia vibes, so I'm really happy. I love this tree. I love trees overall. Alrighty, so now you've seen what it looks like freshly planted. Fingers crossed they're all gonna survive, but I suppose you will find out in the next clip. Alright, why don't we start in the far corner? Now, one thing I haven't really sorted in this garden yet is furniture. I've had these on my balcony. They're obviously not really ideal for the space, but I have gotten a heater so I can enjoy this garden when it gets colder as well. I planted some calla lilies and a canna lily, and that's one of the propagations from my mother plant, and this is its first leaf that it has grown, so it's doing well. Not the time of the year for it. It could go dormant. It's probably going to go dormant, but that's okay, it'll come back. Over here, those are some small propagations of my other canna lily Cleopatra I planted some here and I planted some here as well, and they were honestly just non-existent. They were just little shoots, like they weren't here, nothing. They all came just out of the ground. Ideally they all have a little bit of red variegation, but most of them just seem to come out just green at the moment. It's okay, they're still going to flower nice and they should have a really good time out here. Then let's talk about this one over here. This is my ornamental yam. Now it should go dormant anytime, and quite clearly something has been eating it. Now I honestly didn't expect it to even survive out here at all. It actually really expanded almost. But what I've noticed is that all of these large dark leaves, they lost a lot of the color as well. But when I grew it indoors with less light, it grew all of these really nice dark leaves. Now outside it's growing much smaller leaves and they're brighter in color, which I don't necessarily love. I love the darkness, so I need to consider whether next year I'm gonna just plant it on that fence and let it take over, or if I'm taking it back inside. Alright, this is a little plant that I bought at the Botanic Gardens. I just love the variegation and I know this is gonna have a good time because they grow that at the Botanic Gardens as well. Right, then we have these beautiful gum trees in my garden. I have 2 of them, one here and one there. Now these have super smooth bark. I don't know the exact type, unfortunately. But what happens is it sheds its bark, I think, twice a year. So nothing will climb on it. I will not have climbers on here because the bark sheds. And here's the bebe. The bebe is allowed to go outside, but only with my supervision because I don't want him to jump the fence. Alright. I planted a little totem over here, which seems to be happy. And this is another plant that I got from the Botanic Gardens, but something is eating it. But still happy down here. Lots of new growth coming. I planted a watermelon peperomia. I honestly expected this to die instantly. Whew, but it hasn't yet, so happy days. Hello. And over here is like an orchid that I just popped on here, and you can see the roots are already attaching to the host. So yeah, it is cool. Alrighty, all of these like bushes, I have no idea what they are, but they were already here and I wish they weren't, but they actually give a little bit of shade. So west is this way, north is this way. Keep in mind I'm in the northern hemisphere, so during summer the sun will kind of be like this. During winter the sun kind of goes like this. So I do get some direct sun, but the trees and the bushes are kind of shading everything underneath. So I thought it would be a good spot for some crawlers. Now these leaves got burned in my other courtyard. That was before they moved into this spot. They would not get burned in this spot. But that's why I chose this spot, because the other spot was too sunny for it. And since I planted it in the ground, it has given me this beautiful leaf. And specifically with crawlers, I always had so many spider mite issues. And since I put it outside, not a single spider mite. But let's talk about pests later on a little bit more. Now this is a gloriosum propagation, and I mean, look at this. This were the leaves when I planted it. It has given me 2 tiny leaves over here, and this third shoot has given me this big leaf. So it's definitely happy, despite the fact that it's the wrong time of the year. Another little one popping up over here, must come from this, and some more here. So I have a lot of gloriosum propagations that I planted in here. But look at these 2, they're thriving. So sorry, this was Dean McDowell, this is gloriosum. Let's ignore the anthurium, I only put this in here recently. It was getting bashed against the tree, that's why it's so, it was further back earlier, so I moved it forward a bit. And over here we've got Silver Cloud and Mamey. Again, 2 that I just could not shake the spider mites off, but these are all new leaves since I planted it here, I believe. So it's happy. And look at this, it's also growing a new leaf, so also happy. Oh my god, and the tiniest one over here. Then my Maranta that I planted here, now again it's going into the wrong time of the year. Usually I would actually cut it back completely during winter. But look at it, it's flowering. So it's definitely enjoying its spot, and it's just gonna crawl, it's just gonna take over. This one, I put the name on screen, its species name is SYDNEYPLANTGUY, but the genus keeps changing, which is actually just a good, it shows that honestly we humans just made up these names. We give it names. Sometimes they're reclassified. The plant hasn't changed, the DNA hasn't changed, just we changed the way that we refer to it. So, you know, let's not get too caught up about plant names. In the back I've got some syngoniums, and I've also pushed out some nice leaves since I planted it here. This is actually the only plant I bought. This was my housewarming gift to myself. I planted it here, and there is a runner somewhere. Where's the runner? Here. There's a runner, and I'm just trying to get the runner to root, so I kind of buried it under a lot of mulch. That is Caletheia mosaica. I don't think it's Caletheia anymore. Again, reclassified. And this one is, this one doesn't look too happy, but this one is a Cryptosperma johnstonii. I hated it on my balcony, turned back to nothing. Yeah, see how it goes out here. This one is a velvet alocasia, and it has, it loves it out here. I have never seen it that happy, with me at least. So happy days. I reckon alocasias are going to have a great time here. My Trio Star planted over here as well. Most of these crunchy leaves, they already came with it. So I just couldn't even be asked to chop them. Little Silver Cloud hasn't done any, not Silver Cloud, was it? Silver Dragon hasn't done anything yet. And some more Marantas, a Silver Band and a Black Maranta over here. Also flowering, like they haven't grown many leaves, but the flowers tell me that it's happy, and I reckon in spring it will start spreading. Over here I've got a dubia on a pole without a pot, and look at the roots. So I'll record a separate video on this. And it's started giving me splits. Yay. Alrighty, let's have a look over here. Here are just some plants that are usually, actually this one lives outdoors, but these ones are usually inside. But today's a really nice sunny day and we don't get all too much sunlight hours at the moment. So I'll just bring them out, put them on that little veranda thing, and then they can soak up the sun a little bit. Super nice to just go out and like hoist them down. Yeah. And here's the inside. Hello. Oh wow, that light is not actually flickering in real life. That is just how the camera picks it up. Alright, next section. Over here, I literally just planted a few random propagations that I had on the way. And this is Brett's favorite spot to lie on, so the micans keeps getting squished. And here's a little Salvador as well, Siltepecana as well. But it's growing leaves, so it's definitely rooting and it's happy it's not dying. I just don't know if it has any chance against Brett. Alright, over here I planted a Billy. It's sending out a new growth point, so it seems happy. And a Cuprea over here. Again, I reckon alocasias will do fantastic out here. All right, and then over here, I've got a bunch of moss poles. So whenever I chop a moss pole now, they just go out here. So I've got an Atabapoense, the bottom. I've got the Cebu Blue. By the way, this pole over here is the bottom of this pole, right? So this part was attached, or like this was on top of that. And then I did the chop and extend. And then obviously this is the new extension, and then this has grown. So this is Cebu Blue. It loses the silver as it matures, but look how beautiful that is. And Epipremnum is a native genus to Australia, the northern parts of Australia, but I reckon it's gonna have an okay time over here. This is Monstera siltepecana. This is Monstera pinnatipatita. It's definitely increased in leaf size since it's out here. It's giving me nice fenestrations. It looks crazy when it first unfurls, but yeah, I'm really excited about this. And look at the internodal spacing. It definitely, from here, it's been growing outdoors, I feel like it has reduced, which is just a sign of it getting enough light and maturity. Next to it is Adansonii. This is the bottom part of my big Adansonii indoors that you now can't see. But this was the bottom part, and then you can see this is where I chopped it after the chop and extend, and then it has reshot. 3 shoots have all reshot in a new spot, and they're crawling up here. And since I put it outside, it has given me huge leaves. I reckon this might actually overtake the one that I'm growing inside, even though it started off with much smaller leaves, just because it really has a good time out here. And then this is Philodendron ernestii. So this was the first leaf it grew outside. I'm not too sure what happened with the corner, but you know, we're dealing with nature. You cannot expect your leaves to all look perfect. And then this is the newest leaf that it has grown. Unfortunately, has had some, I don't know how that happened, but that's normal as well, right? I also want to normalize imperfect leaves. They're not always all perfect. This is Anthurium, what's it called? Bosworth Beauty. Now this one, same as the other Anthurium, it was like in one of the viburnums in the other courtyard, and the new leaves were just getting smashed against all of the branches. So that's why it has so much damage. But overall, I reckon it will have a good time. I mean, it's sending out a flower, so it can't be unhappy. Or it's its last push of survival. Alright, and then over here I've got my pasta. Again, I put all of my crawlers out here apart from my Plowmanii because I'm not having a good time with them indoors. Get first new leaf over here and another new leaf coming in the back. So clearly happy. And then more recently I also put my biggest Gloriosum out here, but it hasn't done anything yet. But yeah, I'm really liking this little corner. So this little corner is like the used to be indoors, now we're outdoors. And I'm mainly choosing the plants based on a couple of criteria. Actually, let's talk about it in a second. Let's talk about the criteria of what plants I've chosen. I just want to finish the tour real quick. Right, over here we've got Philodendron martianum, Regal Shields, look how beautiful, Rhaphidophora decursiva, Monstera deliciosa Brazilian form. Then we've got Canna Lily Cleopatra. It lost all of its red, but it should come back. And then Canna Lily Stuttgart with all of the beautiful variegated leaves. It has absolutely exploded. If you've seen the video of when I first put it here, tiny, I've just given it a repot and a bigger pot, and it has exploded with new shoots. Look at them. I'd never propagate any of this. It just does it by itself. And when I repotted it, I just broke one of the stems off and planted it here, and it's happy. Now my jade tree that has not been propagated in, that has not been repotted in 3 years, so it's definitely due for a repot, but I don't know. And unfortunately we had one casualty during the move. I let all of my plants dry out so they're a little bit easier to transport, and I let this dry out heaps. So I cut it all back. Honestly, I don't know if this is gonna regrow over here, but I've seen some new growth coming out of the stem over here. So it's gonna recover. it definitely would have set it back a little bit. Oh, look at this, it's holding on. But that's okay, it's a native, so it should have an easy time out here. So I'm surprised that it's the only plant that didn't survive. The bloody native. Oh, and here's my baby. Are you lying on my... Hi, this is my canna lily. You're messing with my canna lily, baby. Oh no, you're just taking good care of it. Okay, thank you. You're holding it warm? Okay, thank you. Very kind of you. Oh yeah, and I have these lights as well. They look beautiful at nighttime, and they're just solar powered, but I can also charge them via USB because I don't have a power plug out here. Now, that's the garden for now. I don't think I'm going to do much more about it until spring hits us, because that's when I know all of the plants that I'm going to plant will have the best chances of surviving. As I said before, it's just really all of the plants that didn't fit inside anymore, and so far everybody has had a really good time out here, but obviously we haven't really faced winter yet. So fingers crossed, it's going to be a case of survival of the fittest, but yeah, if they survive this winter, then I know they're gonna survive here for the rest of their lives. I put everything in the ground apart from the plants on the moss poles. That's just because I'm gonna keep doing my chop and extend. And if I have it potted in the ground, then I would just have to dig it out of the ground, which seems really annoying. I'm expecting them to grow quite fast out here because they get a lot of light, could reduce the internodal spacing, so maybe it's not actually going to reach the top of its moss pole really quickly, but I just want to keep my options open to consistently do chop and extends. Plus this way I can also just rearrange them and move them around depending on the way that I like them to look. And obviously the plants on the other side are left in pots because I wanted to make sure that my garden has plants on both sides, and obviously it's all concrete over there, or it's like pavement over there, so they need to stay in pots. And once I have furniture in there, I want to move the pots around a little bit and create little islands of plants and so on as well. But probably going to look into furniture in beginning of spring as well, because during winter I can't use this space all too much, and it's usually pretty wet and cold during winter, and then it's just going to make the furniture deteriorate. But if I see a good offer somewhere, then I have no hesitation snapping it up straight away. Now let's talk about cold and wet. I'm obviously a bit worried about the plants, like not worried. Worried is definitely the wrong name. I would say I'm not confident that all plants over here are going to survive, and the main challenge is really going to be the cold and the wet. Now, cold in itself is fine, wet in itself is fine, but cold and wet is really a deadly combination that's usually causing rot, root rot, stem rot, and so on. So I'm gonna try and be really conservative with the watering. Now, if it's raining, to be honest, these moss poles don't get that much rain. Keep in mind, like the surface area, like if it rains straight, like the moss pole only has a tiny surface area at the top. It's not gonna rain that much on there. Of course, it's gonna rain on the leaves and so on, which keeps the leaves clean, but the moss poles don't get too wet from actually just the rain. Now, I'm kind of keeping them much drier than I would keep them inside, just because it gets colder during the night and I don't want them to, like the cold wet is just not a good combination. So that's really the only thing I can do about that, and then we'll just see who's going to have a good time and not. You might have noticed I mainly chosen Monsteras and Epipremnants to live out here because I just feel like they're going to be a little more resilient than some philodendrons. Specifically the velvets would not have a good time out here. But proof is in the pudding. Right, the other thing I have had heaps of questions about is pests. Now, some people were saying, oh my god, happy days, you're gonna grow outside, you're gonna have so much less pest issues. Other people were like, oh my god, there's gonna be pests all over the shop, like, what are you gonna do? Now, I personally have not really noticed any pests out here so far. Yes, I've noticed caterpillars eating my ornamental yam over there. I don't know if you would consider, oh my god, Brett is super happy looking at the birds. I don't know if you consider caterpillars a pest. I feel like I'm doing a service. I'm feeding the future butterflies. It's nature. I want to create a garden. I want to put a piece of nature into my backyard, and part of nature are pests, are insects, are caterpillars, are snails, and so on. That's part of it. If you don't enjoy that part of nature, then you don't enjoy nature, I reckon. You probably and enjoy nature through Instagram. I don't know, right? But I'm pretty realistic with my expectations. I love growing outdoors because it's like an ecosystem, and every ecosystem also needs some pests and so on. But actually, I am more the team one, the first team. I have noticed less pest issues out here, just because out here is a harsher climate for even the pests as well. The leaves get rained on all the time, so, or like even if I just spray with a hose, like pests are gonna have a harder time sticking to the leaves and really doing something to them. But of course it's also not prime season for pests, right? Who knows what's going to happen in spring and summer? It might go crazy. I want to be really careful out here because I don't want to use any chemicals for pest treatment out here because environment. But also I can't really release beneficial insects because we're not in an enclosed environment. I reckon nature will just do its own thing. That's at least my goal, survival of the fittest. And if nature doesn't do its own thing and the plant doesn't survive, then it's just a sign that this is not the right space for the plant, or it's not the right plant for the space. When down the road is the start of a national park, and the plants over there are alive. They weren't all eaten by pests because they're outside. They just need to be the right plant for the right environment. And this is my learning curve. I'm testing out which is the right plant for the right environment. Talking about that, I kind of skipped over this one. This is a huge bird of paradise, so SYDNEYPLANTGUY, I believe. And this is already its third big new leaf that it gave me since I came here. I chopped a bunch of the older leaves off, which I think just sparked it to grow a few new ones. But this has already been here, not my plant. It's been growing here just based on the size, must have been growing here for a few years. And it's alive. So, and I mean, they are all over, everywhere. Like when I walk through the streets over here, there's so many birds of paradise in Australia. So clearly these sort of plants can survive outside. So if this can survive out here, I don't know why my monsteras wouldn't necessarily. It's more a fact of, can I get them used to the changing conditions quick enough before they're hit by they're kind of blindsided by the harsher conditions. So I'm hoping, because I put them here in March, that they had enough time to get used to the harsher conditions before it gets terrible. Our terrible is really not that terrible. Alrighty, I reckon that is plenty. As I mentioned before, I don't have all too much information to pass on because I haven't made these experiences yet, but I'm gonna keep you up to date with the garden, how it's going, if everything survives through winter, and then, to be honest, I can't wait for spring and get a few more plants in the garden, and just I'm excited for the warmer season. But gotta get through autumn and winter first, and maybe that's a good time for me to focus on the inside in the meantime. Well, I hope you enjoyed this space, and letting you know that I actually have a second courtyard on the other side of the apartment as well that I have big plans for. So I'd encourage you to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos I upload. Thank you again for watching, and happy growing. Bye.